Welcome back, everybody. I am excited to introduce you to a man who is an ideas generator capable of turning dreams into a reality. Kris is a co-founder and strategist at Market Grade, an interdisciplinary consultancy focused on marketing, design, innovation, and strategy. Kris also teaches a wide range of business, entrepreneurial, and leadership classes at the University of Calgary and Mount Royal University. In addition, he continues to work with students and startup ventures to help grow their businesses and diversify the Alberta economy. Welcome, Kris, and thank you for jumping on board with this mini-series where I hope to share valuable information to people of all walks of life. So my first question is, with the current state in technologies, innovation, and market competition, how can startups use opportunity identification to build their business foundation and develop a sound strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a course that I've actually been teaching at the University of Calgary for a while now. And we actually approach it from all sorts of different perspectives. So there's different approaches that you can look at. Actually, I think probably one of the most interesting, and I don't think people realize that there's this potential, but a lot of businesses, family-run businesses right now, their children do not want to take over the businesses. I think that's probably one of the biggest opportunities. Imagine you have a business that's been running for like 30, 40, 50 years. The kids don't want to take over. Now you'd have to go, instead of going and starting up from something from scratch, you have that goodwill, you have people that are already customers. They might even be able to stay on for a little bit to just make sure that there is that continuity. So I think that's a really interesting aspect that I think a lot of people overlook, because everything right now, it's like looking at the sexiness of technology. And while I'm a big believer of technology, I did my first startup back in 1999. And so I learned how to code, learned HTML, CSS, MySQL. And back then, to give you an idea, and I described this, I mean, we were chatting about this the other day, but I call this the democratization of getting into business. So back then, an e-commerce website would cost $100,000. That was a starting point. And so the software that my team developed, it would allow you to go and build large e-commerce websites and have one person go and manage the entire site. And back then, you would have to have a full team. And so I describe it as almost like the Shopify, but like 20 years ago. And now think about it, from 100,000, 20-something years ago, to now it's $29 a month at Shopify. Huge, shift in terms of the economics. Over the last couple of months, we see the generative AI with ChatGPT. Even, forget about ChatGPT. I got a email from one of the colleagues just yesterday, and she got early access to Bing, which is powered by ChatGPT, and she threw in one of our essays into there, just like the full instructions. It generated a pretty decent outline. It even had some sources. I probably would have to do some more research, but that wasn't something that you had available. Imagine with this technology, this is like having an additional assistant. And so I'm a big believer. This is my prediction, and I was telling you that not only are we going to have like one person, like multi-millionaire type of business ventures, I think in the future, and who knows how quickly this will happen, there might be a $1 billion one-person company, just because of all these advances in technology. And so it's just a matter of going and figuring out what is out there. You should find that niche, try to solve a problem, I always tell students the best ideas are finding problems that maybe you're facing in your own personal life. But you don't just stop there. You go and research it, you go and test it out, you talk to people, see if this is something that is worth pursuing. And you look at something like Kylie Jenner, for instance. She went and sold her Kylie Cosmetics to Coty. There's been some discrepancies. She was apparently the youngest female billionaire ever, but now some reports have come out that it might not be the case. But nevertheless, if you look at it, she went and, using her social media influence, which again, we wouldn't have that back in the day. You can tap into, millions and maybe even billions of people. So getting that awareness out, she was able to go, she didn't know anything about e-commerce. In fact, her website was built on Shopify. She had a team of 6 people. And if that Forbes article was correct, she sold half of it for $600 million, right? And that was in a matter of a couple of years. And sure, like, some people will hate on the Kardashian kind of side of things, but I mean, good on her. She leveraged her reputation, all the trends from a social media perspective. And so, again, it's an exciting time. I mean, that's something that I'm really passionate about in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation. You look at inflation is so high these days. I mean, you go get some groceries. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he has a restaurant. A head of lettuce was like $6 or $7. And so I'm like, if it was me, I mean, that's just like water weight anyways. Maybe I would just take it out and, or maybe add a premium if you did want to go and include it. But again, things are shifting. There's a lot of changes happening. I mean, I just saw an article just yesterday. Nordstrom, they're closing all of their Canadian locations. And again, why? If you look at it, it's because of e-commerce. You having a brick and mortar store, that's a lot of overhead. I mean, now kind of, even if you think about it, I always liked Nordstrom, but what did a lot of people do? They're just going in there and just, kind of browsing and not really buying anything. And so one of the things that I always, try to insist on students is just be aware of your environment. Or not even just students, but anybody in general, just be aware, like, watch what's happening. So something like that, like if you went and now it kind of makes sense, and like, I guess hindsight is 2020, but Nordstrom, how many people were actually buying stuff? They were just going and browsing the stuff. There's a huge building that they have all this staff. They were friendly. They were awesome. I mean, I'd rather go and buy something from Nordstrom than, let's say, Holt Renfrew, just because of the customer service differentiation. But again, it's interesting time. I think this is, there is really no excuse. There's so much available. Costs have come down. If you don't know how to code, that's okay. There's a lot of no-code tools available as well. And not everything has to be tech-based, but certainly every business now has to become a technology company because it's impacting every facet. And what the technology is allowing you to do is become more efficient and streamline the processes and hopefully bring down your costs.
So whether it's a student or somebody that's starting a different venture in business operation, how would you say is a way to change their perception or reframing so they don't look at it and say, there's too much competition, I have nothing to add into the marketplace, or create a strategy, whether it's through social media and marketing, to be able to give them that resiliency, even if there's a couple of moments where they fail, where they just get back up and they stay on the game plan.
Yeah, Angelica, that's a good point. See, a lot of people, they have these self-imposed obstacles. They'll be like, hey, there's already this out there. There's all this competition. Well, let me give you a couple of examples. You look at Apple, for instance. Were they the first ones to come up with an MP3 player? No. In fact, probably one of the first companies was Sony. Sony is a tried and true brand. Like if I showed you my original first music player was the yellow Walkman with the cassette tape. Then when we moved on to CDs, I got the Walkman, the CD version. They came out with an MP3 player. I know my parents, ever since they've been immigrated to Canada, they've always bought everything Sony. And some of the things like our TV was like thousands of dollars back in the day. They should have been able to capitalize on the market if you base it off of traditional business theory, which is first mover advantage. I would argue that there is maybe more of a last mover advantage where you let all the competition go and try things out, fail. And what did Apple do? They looked at it, how everybody else was doing. They came up with a design with that circle, that iPod. That became their number one selling product. And then from there, they took that and adapted it to becoming the smartphone, the iPhone. Right? And BlackBerry, they didn't see them coming. They didn't even acknowledge them as being a credible threat. And again, there was some trends that changed. I mean, I don't know if we need to get into all that, but I'll give you another example. Google was not the first search engine. I remember back in the day, there was Alta Vista. That was my favorite that I used. And actually, I was introduced to it here at Mount Royal when I was a student from the library. And it was actually Margie McMillan, who I have to credit for all of my research skills. But there was Excite, Hotbot, Web Crawler, Ask Jeeves. There was a whole plethora of search engines. What was the most dominant one right now? It's Google. And in fact, who knows? It might not be because of the AI wars that are taking place. You know, now Bing has gone and integrated ChatGPT into their search engine. Google is trying to go and combat that. Who knows? I mean, we might be, let's say 5 years from now, we might not be saying Google it, we might be saying Bing it, right? But again, this is something that just because the competition is there, you shouldn't just talk your way out of it. Sure, even in fact, I think having competition is a good thing because at least that there is a market for it. And so what you need to do is figure a way that you can differentiate yourself from what everybody else is doing. And in fact, you look at right now, it's interesting. I watched a video of Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, and he was describing Google as being the 800-pound gorilla. And he's like, at least we'll be known as the company that made this gorilla dance, because even if they go and take a couple of % of the search market, that's going to add money to their bottom line. With Google, you know, now they're in like defense mode, and they had this technology. I mean, one of the things, because I do teach innovation as well, I would highly encourage you to read books from Clayton Christensen. He passed during the pandemic, but he was a professor at Harvard. And one of the books that he wrote was The Innovator's Dilemma. And so what the Innovator's Dilemma is that if you are running your company well, you should go and focus in on where you're getting the most amount of revenue. So in Google's case, where are they getting most of their revenue? It's from ads on search. So whether it's on YouTube or on their search engine with Google Ads. And so it doesn't make any sense for them to just go and throw all that away. To their credit, they have, and so this is what Clayton Christensen puts in there. He says that you should invest about 20 to 30% into innovation, so research and development. And Google has been doing that. So they had what they described as their 20% day. So they would allow Google employees to work on whatever they want one day of the week. Out of that, Gmail came out of it. Google Maps. You know, there's a whole plethora of products that came out of that 20% day initiative, and it's actually driving, you know, money to their bottom line. But again, from the search aspect, in fact, they have one of the first quantum computers. They probably have been developing this generative AI. They tried a couple of weeks ago. They launched what they're describing as their version of ChatGPT, which is called Bard. My co-host, he was watching or listening to a podcast that he listens to, and apparently they referred to it as BARF because it failed miserably, their live demo. But anyways, again, there's things in place. If you're going and running your company effectively, you will go and try to maximize as much money as possible. And who knows, things change, and that's one of the things in life. They say, I think Benjamin Franklin mentioned this, that there's only two certainties in life, which is death and taxes. Well, I would say that there's actually a third, which is change. Change is always happening, and if you don't go and adapt, you probably are going to go and die in the water, and who knows? We'll see how some of these companies, would you have ever imagined, I look at like Motorola, would you have ever imagined that they basically get bought out by Google? They took all of their IP, spit it out. Same thing happened with Nokia. Microsoft took it. I mean, and now it's actually funny because it's making a bit of a comeback. There's that Nokia, that little brick phone. In some places overseas, a lot of people just want a phone. I would even say, I think even from, it's unfortunate that Apple discontinued the iPod, because I believe having all these different devices, sometimes you just want a music player and you don't want to have all these distractions. And so who knows? I mean, that could be another opportunity. In fact, Sony has actually released a new MP3 player. It looks really nice. It's really expensive. And it's just a dedicated music player. Wow. So
now I know you have a lot of knowledge in a huge facet in the business world, and just how to be able to create something out of nothing and turn it into potentially a billion-dollar product or service. When it comes to innovation and creativity, I know with creativity, there's always a way of recycling past ideas and creating something new. With both innovation and creativity, where do you think collaboration kind of lands in that?
Well, and see, this has been one of the interesting topics over the last few years, especially with us going all remote with the pandemic and so on. And there's some people, they have a school of thought where they argue that you have to be in person to go and create innovation. And so, there's those serendipitous collisions that you might have, like you just walking down the hall and then you run into somebody. And so in the remote world, you have to go and create mechanisms for that. So one company that I would suggest, they've written a number of books. They're called 37 Signals. And some of their books are actually for free as well. They've been remote their entire life of their company. They are not a company that has gotten funding from anybody. The only investor that they ever got was Jeff Bezos, and he is one of the richest people. But it was just to give a little bit of capital into the company for the actual founders so that they could go and buy some of the things that they need. But it is privately held. Who knows how much they're making? But that company, I have a huge amount of respect. I first came across them back in the early 2000s, and they were just a web design company. And what they developed was a project management platform. It's called Basecamp. And recently, over the last, I believe, 3 years, they've also created their own email service called Hey. And this company, completely remote, they have, the people right across the world working together. Again, they haven't had to go and raise a crap load of money. They've self-financed themselves. They're coming out with new features. They just released the latest version of Basecamp. So some of the things that they do is they'll have, let's say on a Friday, they'll get people just to have those serendipitous kind of collisions online via video conference. They actually want to go and release product features that people need to have. Some people think that just coming up with ideas, that's all you need to do. Well, what about all the stuff that you already have in place and maybe just fixing it and just focusing in on those core competencies? And that's one of the things that with 37 Signals, what they've done, like Basecamp, it's not for everybody, but there's a lot of the functionality. They keep it very basic and simple, and for most people, it probably would work. And so they don't go and fixate on the shiny objects, and they just focus on making their product meet the customer's needs. And really that's what you should be doing, is focusing in on the users, making sure that they have everything that they need to go and get their work done. And so yeah, I look at, even some people think like with all these advances in technology that we're going to be replaced. Human beings are going to be replaced. Well, we're not there yet. I've actually been using ChatGPT in my class because it's a hot topic right now. And that creativity element isn't there yet. That critical thinking, critical analysis aspect isn't there. So again, these are things, those soft skills. The World Economic Forum, they predicted back, I believe it was in 2020, that the top skills for 2025, we're getting there, it's 2023 right now, it would be like problem solving, critical analysis, critical thinking, communication skills, creativity skills. So again, those are things, those soft skills, that's what we should be focusing in on. And all of those, and look, you've taken that creativity course with me, and one of the things, some students absolutely dread the process, they don't like it. And I'm of the belief that anybody can be creative. We're all creative. We just put in place these self-imposed obstacles. What does it come down to? It's repetition, practice. And so that's what one of the things that some students don't like, is that why are we keep doing the same thing over and over? Why do I have to come up with new ideas? I've already come up with 50 ideas. Why do I have to come up with another 25? It's to challenge you to go and come up with those and just get in that process, using tools like mind mapping and other aspects. There's even just coming up with ideas with other people. It's a different dynamic. And so again, these are things that you have to go and try and experiment. And without that, and I think the other thing in academia probably where we need to improve on is not just, it's almost like failure is seen as something that isn't good. Mm-hmm. We need to embrace that failure, because a lot of successful people, look at somebody like Dyson. He went and pitched Dyson, the vacuum, thousands of people. Imagine most people would probably quit. They'd be like, after the first even couple hundred, they're done. Same thing happened with the person who founded Starbucks. Imagine pitching it to like hundreds and upon hundreds of people. And it comes down to that persistence and looking at that vision and being driven. And so as long as I would say, if your strategy, your vision going to the future, think about that. If it's strong, fixate on it. Again, you should also wrap your hand. I tell people to embrace that problem. You should fall in love with the problem. Don't fall in love with the solution. Fall in love with the problem and try to solve that for the people that are impacted by it.
It kind of reminds me of, is it Simon Sinek? Mm-hmm. Simon Sinek always talks about not just vision, but I mean the underlying why. And don't worry about the how, because with time and with just as things unfold, and like you said, being aware of the environment, being able to pivot, being able to navigate through moments of uncertainty, that why is sustaining you. And regardless what happens and how many times you fail, and coming back to the educational structure, it's important to fail, because to your point, it creates character, it creates that strength to be able to continue. So do you think, and I'm curious with your experience and expertise, foreshadowing or looking 5-10 years from now with everything that's happening in technology, do you think, because the pendulum's going so far one way, everything's going online, everything's getting so technological, do you think that there's going to be a point where it comes back toward that center line? Because at the end of the day, we're human, we need those soft skills, we need that level of customer service to communicate and then actually sell either a product or a service.
Well, and it's unfortunate because of the economics right now, but look at like Best Buy. I mean, if I had to go and buy an electronics item, I might even order it online, but why would I buy it from Best Buy as opposed to some of these other companies? Because they have a physical location. I can go there, I can talk to people. Right? And that's why we haven't seen, well, we'll see, who knows, maybe they have huge real estate spaces, and I could imagine how much overhead there is. I mean, I look at even like Amazon. I mean, it's during the pandemic, I used Amazon a lot. I don't know how they do it. I remember one time we needed jam. My daughter wanted jam for her sandwiches or whatever. Ordered it at night, like at 10 p.m. The next day it showed up. And I don't know how they do it. Like, it's just incredible. But it's also, on the flip side, if you ever want to buy something and you return it, apparently it ends up in the landfill. And so there's like these sustainability type of issues that come up. And so, again, I think there needs to be some way, and Amazon is even looking at this, like having physical locations, because there is what we describe the last mile problem. So getting whatever product to your house, it's been something that nobody has been able to solve yet. Even there's been things like, and you've seen them fail as of late, the scooters that we've had, and bikes and electric bikes and so on, and just having them available for rent. You know, that problem, and I don't even know if it is a problem that needs to be solved, but it's something that, like you say, like that human connection. I mean, I could see if you do it right, like, do you really want to, let's say if it's a pair of shoes, do I want to go and order like 3 pairs knowing full well that only one of them is going to work for me? Wouldn't it be a lot easier? I mean, this happened, actually, I'll tell you, it's so funny. I went into Chinook. So I went into Chinook. It's one of the busiest malls, apparently, per capita in all of North America. Thinking that, okay, pandemic's over, we're back into real life. I need to get some shoes, and I figured, why not go to Chinook? There's Browns there, there's the Bay, there's I need some running shoes, so Sports Check. So I went to Sports Check. They did not have my size. So you know what they did? They ordered it for me, and it was interesting. On the till, it actually showed the shipping cost. I'm like, okay, so I'm paying for the shipping cost? They're like, no, that's just an internal thing. but the cost, it was something to the effect of like $9 per pair. So they knew, they ordered 2 of them, 2 different sizes. They knew I was only going to probably keep one, and it was going to cost them $18 just to send it to me.
Wow.
Imagine if it was there, I could have tried it on. You would have saved that experience-wise. And so again, there's something to be said about having that retail experience. I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future people don't care about it, but I know that there's a lot of people that don't even like to try on stuff anyways. And so they'll just buy a bunch of stuff, and maybe the retail side, like this online shopping, now you just get it delivered to your house. You can try it in your own comfort of your house and then send it back. But it's not seamless. It's not easy to go and ship that stuff back. I mean, I look at, I just found out somebody mentioned this recently, Zara. So apparently Zara's return policy is very tight. And even there's only certain places where you can drop off the package to go and return it. You can't return it to the store or something. I'm not sure. I haven't gone to Zara. I personally don't. I think they're getting a little bit, especially with that fast fashion. I don't know if it's the best approach to go. But anyways, it's interesting. It's fascinating to see like this behavior, how people are reacting, and who knows what's going to happen like 10 years from now. And maybe we'll just be buying everything online and having it shipped to our house, and we'll never go. Maybe malls will be like totally vacant. And then, I mean, I kind of like going to the mall. It was like you get an outing, especially in I mean, as of late, I've never seen this in my life. I mean, I've lived here all of my life in Alberta. And having minus 40 weather, at least being able to get out and about in a mall, I think, and just socializing and just people watching. Again, it's something that I grew up with, but who knows, this new generation, what do people do these days? I've seen it myself, like when I was working downtown. We're having lunch. I usually put my phone away, but I've seen people who are like, they're pulling out their phone, they're having lunch together. Imagine we're sitting here, they're eating, and they're both looking at their phones too. And it's like, where's that human connection? What does our life come down to?
Totally agreed. And then it kind of wraps around full circle toward mental health, but then that's another topic. With the last 2 minutes to spare, is there anything that you want to kind of conclude with, or is there any kind of advice or tips that you want to give to starting entrepreneurs, whether it's resources, how they can contact you, how can they get more information from what you have to say around the subject? Well,
I mean, I look at it, especially right now in our economy, and that's why I mentioned, like you mentioned in my bio as well, we have a huge opportunity with the Alberta economy. I mean, I look at I describe us, a lot of people think that we're just like, entrepreneurs, like we have this entrepreneurial spirit. And actually, I would go back further. I think it comes back to, and I describe it as a pioneering spirit. So think about it, this province, especially this city of Calgary, what did it come together for? It was actually to go and connect east to west with the railway, and to go and actually bring that whole transportation together. In fact, if you look at some of our neighborhoods, like Mount Royal, for instance, that's where the management of CP Rail lived. Killarney and all these, like there would be the Irish and the Scottish workers and so on. And so here, one of the things, and if you look back, or if you recall, there was the Fort Mac fires, and prior to that, there was the flooding here in Calgary with the Mission. What did we do? When people were in trouble, we came together and helped out. In fact, I remember, our mayor at the time, Mayor Nahid Nenshi, he was overwhelmed by the number of people that came out in droves to help out all the people affected and impacted by the floods. And if you go back to when I said that pioneering spirit, imagine you're on a farm, your combine fails. What's going to happen? Your neighbors are going to help you out because you got to get that harvest. And that's what we do here in Alberta. We help each other out. Right now, we're fortunate. We have all these natural resources. There's technology is impacting. You look at ag tech, clean tech. So just looking at energy and doing it in a clean, sustainable way. There's all sorts of, like, from fintech and other things. So technology is cutting across. And to that end, the province here, the people, the higher ups, they do see that we need to diversify the economy, because oil, it's a non-renewable asset. It's not going to be here forever. And so that investment is here. I would say right now there's so much funding available. It's, I mean, look at, even we were discussing this, if while you were a student here, you could have tapped into it, because we do have, I didn't have this when I was a student here at Mount Royal or even at U of C, but having all the resources, the funding, the competitions, I describe it as we're almost throwing out money out like candy. It's like Halloween. Everybody should go and try to tap into this. And so there's plenty of resources. There's plenty of people that will go and help out. You know, in terms of reaching me, I mean, I'm pretty busy, but I do make time for the people who make, you know, the overtures and the initiative. You can reach me on my website. So it's Kris with a K, KRISHANS.ca. My socials are there, my email. So that's one way that you could touch base with me. But I would advise you to just go and see what resources are out there. Every city has certain people in the innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem that are available to help out. And again, it's that pioneering, that neighborly kind of spirit. We're here to help people out. I mean, here on a side note, I'll give you an example. One of my friends, he went to Toronto, and he went there to go and he had an important meeting. His phone died. And so he asked somebody on the street, hey, I need to find this place. My phone's dead. That individual sent him in the completely opposite direction. And he ended up getting late to that meeting. Obviously, that deal didn't happen. I'll tell you, prior to the pandemic, this was probably 2018, one time I was at this conference here. It was actually an innovation conference called Inventures. And so there was this one lady that I met at the conference, and she had, you know, she's about like 5'6". She had 2 duffel bags and a backpack. And she's like, hey, you know, how do I get to the train station? I'm like, well, hey, I'm leaving where the conference is done. My office is this way. I can walk another block, and let me just take your bag. So we walked along, we talked, and then we get to Bankers Hall, and she's like, oh, now she's at the train station. And you know, you have to get through the building and stuff. So I'm like, it's a little bit complicated. Let me just walk you over there. And that's the difference. I'm not saying that everybody would do this, but like it's, you know, on one hand, in places like Toronto, and trust me, my sister lives there. It's a great city and stuff, but they're go. It's me. Yeah. You know, here we will help people out. And so you'd be surprised, even just having a cup of coffee for like 15 minutes. Again, don't create those self-imposed obstacles. I mean, what's the worst that'll happen? They'll say no. You could reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. There's all these social media platforms that we never had. I mean, I see even here, like as over this time, just teaching and students, I bring in guest speakers. I've had typically on average, if I bring in a guest speaker, there'll be maybe a few, like maximum, like a handful of students that will actually reach out to these guest speakers, even though they're encouraging them to go and reach out and connect. So why wouldn't you? We never had this technology before, right? So again, it's easier more now than ever to actually connect with people. You have all this technology at your disposal. Also, don't get overwhelmed by technology, because tech is just like a tool, like any other tool. And there's so many resources that are available online that you can teach yourself anything. So that's, I guess, my advice to you.
Amazing. So for those viewers that are interested in what Kris has to say, or you want to hear more content, him and his partner, I forgot the other one's name.
Eric Christensen?
Eric Christensen. They do a podcast called EdTech, so I'll add the description and link below. Again, Kris, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all your knowledge and wisdom to help people kind of start up their companies and to create a strong structure to be able to be resilient and to also add a positive impact to the community. So thanks everybody so much for tuning in. Until next time.
So.